Yeah, so the U.S. political system, there's two big reasons why I think it's worthwhile for students to study it. So the first one is the U.S. is, in fact, very influential in world affairs. Peace to fighting Ebola, you name it, the United States has a pretty big role, and it's a complicated role, but it's an important role. So if you want to just understand, if you're a citizen of Japan, if you're a citizen of Sweden or France or the United States or anywhere, what the United States does affects everybody. The second reason I think it's interesting to study the United States is it's just a really interesting system. So there's a lot of moving parts that are surprising, a lot of interesting history and a lot of constraints on the president, constraints on the Congress, constraints on the diplomats. And so just to understand that, I think it's interesting. I think it also puts a good perspective on what happens in Japan or what happens in Sweden or what happens in South Africa or you name it. I think understanding the U.S. political system is helpful there. Just because it's an interesting system, it's an important system, it's a well-studied system, but then also it's been really influential. And so the influence on the Japanese constitutional system is pretty obvious, but the influence on really constitutions everywhere is pretty important. And so I think by seeing how the U.S. works, you get to understand something that affects everyone's lives, and you also get to understand just political systems in general. I think it adds insight to that. So the two most obvious reasons the United States has a lot of influence on the international system. The United States has the biggest military by far, spends the most money by far, it's the most powerful military. And so for better or for worse, it just has a lot of influence there. And the second major reason is just the United States economy is obviously very large. As a share of the world economy, it's declining, right? Just with the rise of China, the rise of Africa, parts of Africa are starting to grow. So that, relatively speaking, the United States economy is declining in some sense. But I think even there, type of system the United States has set up, a free market capitalist system. It's, these other places are developing and they clearly don't look exactly like the United States. China's a very, very different economy, but there's a lot of parts of it that are integrating into a world economic system that the United States has been part of, playing a major role in creating, developing, and fostering. So even if the United States, the relative size of the United States is still very, very large, but even if that's declining, the other countries are growing into a system that the United States has been very influential in creating and supporting. So I quite enjoyed it, and then a couple things that stood out. The first thing that stood out that I enjoyed was the ambition of Akita International University. It's a young university, but it's very hungry in a good way. It's hungry for trying to do something different. It's hungry for trying to do something that integrates with the whole world. It's hungry for trying to kind of push and support Japanese students to do more of that, and think all those things are good things. The general university seems like an interesting place, an interesting idea to try to work on. And then I enjoyed spending time with the students. I thought they are acquainted with taking classes in English, and they have interesting experiences. There's students, Japanese students who've been to Minnesota and to Canada and to all over English-speaking world, and then there's students from Bulgaria and Sweden and France and the United States. So it's a good mix of students as well.